One of the things that truly gifted and experienced salespeople understand is that sales, at the end of the day, is about discovering what somebody's hopes and fears and frustrations and wants and needs are. Like, what is it that they want for their lives? And is there something that I offer that can help them get there? Selling is not about trying to convince somebody what they want. It's aligning what they want with what you do. Period. If you don't get the story, then you have no idea what they want.
Welcome back to Whiskey is for Closers. Today, we are tackling storytelling in sales, but probably not the way you think. We're not talking about your hero's journey pitch deck, Drew. We are talking about the art of getting prospects to tell their story, then playing it back so they feel like you're using Jedi mind tricks on them. Yes, the best salespeople tell amazing stories about their prospects, not themselves. So today, we're talking about why shutting up might be your best sales strategy. However, Drew, Steve, before we get to that, let's start with a quick round. What are you drinking today?
All right, Steve, I want to hear you, man.
All right, man. So I've got right here a bottle of Fiddler Encore from, it is American Spirit Whiskey. So this is an Atlanta-based distillery. So we're going hometown here this week. And even more cool is that the two guys who started the distillery are University of Georgia grads. So go Dogs, baby. So we got two UGA grads. They started this distillery, I think it was in 2015, so not that long ago. And they make kind of, they call it sort of a Southern pot still whiskey. They've won several awards. It's really good. The Fiddler series is where they take kind of their standard whiskey and they fiddle with it, hence the name Fiddler. And so they fiddle with it by, finishing it in different barrels and mixing in different flavors. So this particular one was finished in a tawny port cask barrel. So 7.5 years in the white oak barrel and then a year in a tawny port cask. And it tastes really good, super smooth.
Dude, I don't even know what tawny port cask means.
I've never heard of tawny other than someone I feel like there was a girl when I was in my teens that had the name Tawny.
She was hot.
Katang, like Tawny Katang, right?
Yes.
That's when I saw that, I was like, I'm buying that.
Every tawny I've ever met, they're hot. So there you go.
You got to be hot to carry that name.
There you go.
Well, didn't think we were going there, but Drew, what are you drinking?
You never know where this is going to go, especially later. All right, so today, here is a bourbon whiskey I guarantee you've never heard of before. It is a small-known company called Woodford Reserve. Just kidding. Yeah. Very popular. One of my absolute favorites. And if you've ever been to their actual location in Lexington, it is a great experience. They make the best old fashions. They use their bitters and they utilize their simple syrup, which is more of like a maple, and it is absolutely fantastic. So highly recommend. Can't ever go wrong with Woodford Reserve. We should get like payments from all these people we're promoting. I'm just saying.
So not to one up you, this is not what I'm drinking, but you guys know this. Lived in Louisville, Kentucky for a number of years. I have 2 unopened bottles of Woodford that are Kentucky Derby. Like they have a release every year for the Kentucky Derby. One of them is the 150th. So that was a couple years ago. And the other one is from 2020, which is the only year that the race didn't happen in May because of COVID. And so I have those 2 releases. They're on the shelf behind me here.
That's awesome.
Which is kind of cool. So in honor of this last week, because we're, Altezza, we work remote, I got to see Steve and Drew in person at a conference in Chicago, Illinois. And we got to hang out with some friends, Blackwell HR, and our advisor Jay Cash. And so I am drinking tequila today. which is
You found it.
from Jay's stash that
But that's
Drew and
from
I got
Jay
to.
Stash. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought this was great because one, I've got a little marg going here, in honor of our friends at Blackwell HR, and on the back of the bottle it says "Best enjoyed with friends." Thought it was good.
I
Well,
love
you
that.
are in good
Yeah.
company.
Absolutely,
We have
absolutely. Okay,
that was a great event. Good time with the folks at Blackwell and Jay and everybody at
yeah,
Cultivate
and
Advisors.
everybody at
So
Cultivate.
awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, cheers, guys.
Dude, yes.
Cheers.
Okay.
3 quality pours.
3 quality pours. Let's warm up.
Okay.
Think about, it could be recent, it could be a while ago. What is the worst, let me tell you about our company monologue you've ever had to sit through?
Okay. Steve, can I go first?
Yeah, man, go for it.
Okay. Have you ever sat through those timeshare presentations?
My
I'm
God.
just going to say that might be okay. So, my wife and I had just got married, made no money. So, we're like, okay, how are we going to afford an excursion? And so, you know how, like, sometimes they're like, dude, just sit through a couple of hour presentation, then you get free tickets to said event. So, my wife and I both sat through this thing. We won a 36-hour trip to it was to Vegas, and they put us up in the worst hotel. Like, I felt like I walked out with the disease. And as I was like contemplating what I had to sit through in order to get this like 36-hour excursion, I was like, this was not worth it whatsoever, because guess how much they talked the whole time, or talked during that the whole time. It was literally on. You just sat there and listened to it, and then they pressured you the entire time to make a purchase. And I was like, listen, dude, I got nothing. I just want the tickets. Let me go.
Yeah, I know it's funny because in the timeshare world, it doesn't matter what reason that you come up with that you cannot buy it. They always have an answer for you. So you could say, "Well, but I'm homeless. I can't afford it." Hey, but we've got a 1 year no payment plan that we'll sell you.
Or I'll put you on a payment plan that lasts 35 years.
Yeah, but
No, I
yeah,
don't
you
even
won't be
have that.
homeless this time next year, will you, Drew? You can. The
Ugh.
timeshares are the worst, though.
Totally.
Yeah, but the best timeshare salespeople ask you a whole bunch of questions and then use your answers against you later.
Gotta love that.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, what about you?
Well, I mean, Craig, I feel you and I had a call not that long ago with someone that we were introduced to as a potential strategic partner. And it was a software company, and the guy,
It was supposed to be a networking call.
it was like a networking call, right?
Yeah.
So we jump on this call, and sales guys on the call, and literally like in the first 10 seconds, it's like, okay, guys, well, here we go. And he pulls up his demo and he starts doing his demo.
He may have
And
said, "Here we go."
literally, like, we couldn't freaking stop the guy. I'm texting you, Craig, going, what is happening here? And then it was like, we kind of let it go because it was such a good example of shitty sales
Yes.
techniques. It was like, let's just watch this for a while because it's really bad.
It was
And then-
so bad.
Oh, it's terrible. But dude, how many times software companies are the worst violator of that? They just want to do the free demo. Woohoo! I got the free demo. Guess what, Drew? You just want a free demo.
Yay.
You're lucky
Yep.
day.
And Steve, you and I know this from our background in software. The more you show a product, the less likely somebody will buy it.
That's absolutely true. They could care
Hands
less.
down.
Yeah.
But it was so offensive because it was a networking call, which you don't sell in those. You're meeting people.
Yes.
So it's a networking call. That's what it's supposed to be. And he immediately shared his screen and immediately started walking through software that we didn't even know existed, don't even know what it's for, with no context or understanding about their business or them understanding our business. And I loved it when you stopped him. That was the best part of the call. You're a master at that kind of stuff.
I don't remember how I did it. So
You were just like, why don't we just take a step back here for a second? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your business and the work that you do, and we can do the same. We didn't realize that we're stepping into a sales call. We just thought we were going to kind of get to know each other a little bit and see how we could potentially collaborate together. And so you kind of called him out
And he
on it,
didn't even
but
know what to do with that. It's like,
no,
wait a minute. No, you just wind me up and I do demos. I don't know about any of that other stuff.
true. Oh my gosh. Okay. I mean, we had to start there, right? Like we've all been a part of really bad sales environments or manipulative sales tactics. But Steve, let's kind of start the storytelling side of this. And I'd love for you to just kind of briefly share your founder story. The whole point of this podcast is for founders, entrepreneurs to be able to share their stories and their sales wins and losses and all that kind of fun stuff, right?
Yeah.
So why don't you just kind of share the founding story of Alteza?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, man. And I'll keep it tight. So put a timer on me or something. So I've been in sales my whole life. It's all I've ever done. And there probably was a day and time when I sold like the doing the bad things. In the late 90s, I had the opportunity to go to work for a .com, and it was in the, first .com boom, super exciting. The guy that started the company was really a software developer, right? And not a sales guy, but he knew he needed a sales guy. So he hires me and I go out and I help this company kind of go from pure startup to viable enough to get acquired. We get acquired. The whole .com acquisition thing happens. I'm a millionaire on paper for like 6 months, and then it goes kaput, and I have nothing. So, but after that, I started. I started with a startup, working with a founder who needed help with sales, and then the transition out of that led me to yet another technology company with a founder who needed help with sales. So this became a pattern for me, and so literally for years, I would go into these companies where you had a founder doing sales that was trying like heck to get the sales hat off, either because they hated it or because they knew that they needed to be doing other things to grow the business, but they didn't know how to hire salespeople. They didn't really want to pay the money that you got to pay for experienced salespeople. And so I would go in basically as a fractional salesperson, but we didn't use that term back then. It wasn't a thing. So I just called myself a sales consultant, but I was really more of a closer. And so I'd do strategy and close and whatnot. Anyway, after doing that for several years, I just thought, man, I'm a pattern recognizer kind of guy. And I was like, this seems to be a pattern. So one day, maybe I'll start a business to address that pattern. Well, after I get my kids out of college and I actually have, some disposable income to work with and some home equity, I say, okay, I'm going to start a business that goes after that problem to help founders who are stuck in the sales grind get out with really good salespeople, but they don't have to pay full-time salaries for them. And at first I thought, you know what? I don't even know if this is going to work. So I'll do it myself for a little while and see if it works. And it worked. So here we are 5 years later and having a blast and serving a lot of founders.
Yeah. And from, experience, and Drew, I don't mean to speak for you, but obviously we find the idea, the story is super compelling as a teammate and a team member. It's super compelling, but obviously you are the reason that once we met you, the story's great, but once we met you, we're like, okay, all in. This is where we want to be. But I have a question that, I love great stories. I think they're really important in captivating people and capturing vision and moving people to action. So I'm just curious, how often in a sales call do you share the founding story of Alteza?
Are you asking Drew that or me?
You.
Me? So, okay, lately, not so much because I'm not on as many sales calls. Thank you, Drew. But when I was doing sales for Alteza, it often did come up because I would be asking about the story of the founder I'm talking to. And then at the end of the call, we would start talking about Alteza and what we do. And oftentimes, because I had been interested enough to ask their story, they would ask my story. And so then I would share that story as well. And oftentimes if you've led with asking a lot of great questions, because story is so compelling, telling the story behind your business as you shift into talking about what you do is actually really helpful because everyone loves story, right? And so it's people want to know that you're not just doing it to make money. They understand that money is part of it, but if there's a really compelling story behind it where you discovered something and now you're trying to solve the problem you discovered for everybody else, people love that. So I think it's okay to tell your story, but usually I'm invited to do it.
I think that is the key. And obviously, I set you up for that, right?
Yeah.
That was a nice little tee you up for knocking it out of the park. It's most people, the biggest mistake they make in a sales call is they start talking about themselves immediately. And what you just said was you ask a lot of questions about them, and that creates reciprocity where they then eventually ask about you.
Yes.
Why is that the approach that you typically take?
Well, I was really fortunate, man, that my very first sales job, so right out of college, I went into real estate. And when I went into real estate, I did it as I think I'll do this real estate thing for a while until I figure out what I want to do. We stayed in it for like 11 years. And my mentor, my very first boss, the guy who started that company and who ended up becoming my business partner, he's the one who taught me to ask a lot of questions. So the real estate that we were selling was actually second homes in North Georgia that were being bought by these Atlanta professionals who were looking for a place to escape for the weekend, right? So he just taught me to ask questions about, so tell me why you're here. Tell me what is it that interests you about having a home in the mountains of North Georgia? Like what do you hope that's going to do for you? How's it going to make you feel? What's that going to do for you personally? So he told me to ask these questions of people, and they would always have these stories about, stress and work and, just wanting to create quality memories with their families and stuff. And so that I just learned to do that right from the jump and have just always done it, always found it really powerful. So I took that skill and applied it into a business to business context later on. But that guy taught me to start selling by asking good questions. And it was amazing.
There's a nuance here, and I'm going to say the quiet part out loud, and that is we're really telling, yes, we're telling our story, but we're really speaking in our story about the person that we're talking to, right? We're telling their story and encapsulating and showing, hey, we get where you are and what you're going through by telling our story in that way, being asked to do it. And there are times where I've been on calls or I've been in environments where they don't ask. I don't share because that tells me they're not really interested.
Yeah, they don't care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not really interested. And they're probably not going to do business with us. If they ask us and they lean in, that's a good prospect.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're already interested and we're speaking in a way that's resonating together, right? A lot of times we think that storytelling means I'm telling my stories, but in reality, we have to flip that. We get other people telling their stories then they ask us our stories and it connects. So guys, what is it about storytelling that is really so compelling?
Yeah, storytelling. Like if I think about a really good movie or a really good book, the first thing that I do with either one of those is I find myself in that story. I'm sitting here go, who am I? What character am I playing in this story as I watch this? And I think really good storytelling allows the individual to find themselves in the middle of that. And as people who are asking questions, and I wanted to make this distinction because I think this is really big and it's a nuance, but the motivation of asking questions to close a sale versus asking a question because I'm genuinely curious to know about you and connect with you.
That's
Yes.
Of
good.
those two things, that's a because you can easily say ask good questions, but what's the motivation behind it? And I know all of us would all agree is going like literally, I just meet really fascinating people every single day. And my questions are not for the means don't justify the ends, right? Or the ends don't justify the means. And so being extremely curious and then going, what role do I play in this story? And part of my role is extracting and going, Okay, so what I hear you saying is that what you're saying? In piecing that story together, I'm almost like a publisher. I'm almost like an author or like a director of a movie. And as I'm listening and asking these questions, I'm piecing the storyboard together and I'm going, is this the story I hear you telling? And you can see like their eyes light up and go, yes, that right there. Are these the pain points? Because every good story has pain points. They have lows, they have highs where they conquered things. And so sitting back and seeing the arc or the trajectory, like that is so much fun as a really good salesperson to be able to put all that together.
Yeah, that's really well said, Drew. I think one of the things that truly gifted and experienced salespeople understand is that sales, at the end of the day, is about discovering what somebody's hopes and fears and frustrations and wants and needs are. Like, what is it that they want for their lives? And is there something that I offer that can help them get there? And so if that's what we're trying to do is find out what their hopes and their dreams and their fears are, then we can figure out whether what we have to sell is even the right thing to sell them, right? And if not, then let's help them find that. But people care, they have what they want. Like it's all about what people want. Selling is not about trying to convince somebody what they want. It's aligning what they want with what you do. Period.
Yeah, that's really good.
If you don't get the story, then you have no idea what they want.
Yeah, that's really good. I met an advisor yesterday at the conference, right? And one like just getting to know people. If they're a business advisor going, hey, what with Cultivate, it's really interesting because all of their advisors have sold a business before they became an advisor for Cultivate, right? So the question I asked was just, hey, what did you do before you became an advisor with Cultivate? And I walk into those types of conversations almost with this, like, Drew, you said curiosity, almost with this like anticipation of like, I wonder what I'm going to learn in this conversation. And when you have that type of a mentality, the conversation could go anywhere. And still at the end of the day, like I have a reason that I'm talking to this person and I'm trying to figure out if there's an actual connection or not. And if there's not, that's fine. I met a really interesting person. But if there is, I'm connecting the dots between why I'm talking to them and the interesting story that they're telling me about themselves. And so the first thing she said is she goes, well, yeah, are you familiar with secret shoppers? And I'm like, oh, yeah. She goes, yeah, I was living in Australia and I was trying to figure out a way to make some money. And I go, hold on a second. How did you get to Australia? Right? Like, so already you're going, whoa, you were in Australia? And she's like, yeah, I lived there for 11 years and I started this business and I felt like I needed to get back to the States, but I needed to transition. So she's telling me about the transition of the business. And then, so she moves back to the States. And then I'm like, okay, well, you had transitioned to a person that was in Australia that was running the business. So what did you start to do then? And she's like, well, I always wanted to be an author. So I started writing children's books. And I'm like, hold on a second. What is like off? I'm just going, okay, this is so fascinating. People are so interesting. And I just said, what is your favorite thing that you've ever written? I didn't ask like what's the favorite thing that you've had published. I asked what's the favorite thing that you had that you've written, and she recognized that. Like she picked up on that. And she goes, "That's a great question." And she goes, "It's this book about a bear that falls in love with coffee and it never got picked up. Like nobody ever went with it." And it's called like Barista. And she like showed me like pictures of it and like all this stuff. It was such a fascinating conversation. And at the end of the day, we were able to make this great connection where she then offered and said, hey, there are a couple people that I need to introduce you to. But I was able to get there in a way that wasn't like, hey, who do you know that I need to talk to? And instead, it built a rapport together. And through like curiosity and interest, she then offered some of the things that I was looking for when we started the conversation. So fascinating.
You're a master at that stuff, Craig.
For
I
sure.
love that kind of stuff, man.
Yeah, man.
In sales, you have to really, Drew said it earlier, you have to really care about people and really be trying to help them. Motivation matters. If you're just trying to help yourself by getting a sale, that's the wrong way to do it immediately. You're already losing.
Yeah.
You've created an environment where people are not going to trust you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, Drew, you touched on it when you were talking. You didn't say the word, but the word that came to mind for me when you were talking was intent. It's the seller's intent, right? What is our intent as the seller when we're having a conversation with somebody? And so, like, to your point, Craig, your intent in that conversation was truly to learn about this person because you were genuinely curious about them and you cared. If you're asking questions and the intent is, I'm just doing this to manipulate because really I just want to make a sale and I want them to think I care,
Yeah.
people will read through that all freaking day.
All day.
So
Well,
stop
and
doing it. All day.
100%. And, it's interesting because when I have conversations with people, you can tell those who have a wall of resistance up, right? And one of the ways through the walls of resistance is genuine curiosity. Just genuine curiosity. That's one of the fastest ways to pull down walls and going, hey, listen, at the end of the day, may or may not work, right? Like our solution and what it is you're looking for may not be a fit. But to start this thing off, I am genuinely curious. What is your origin story? Steve, you taught me this. Tell me your origin story. Why did you begin this company? Like, where did this come from? And that one question will unlock all sorts of like, "Ooh, tell me more about that. Interesting. Why did that?" And, sometimes I have to catch myself going, get back to script again. We got other things we need to accomplish, but origin stories are so important. And so, Steve, you've done a great job of making that kind of the very first question that you start to understand about the individual.
Gift card for you, Drew.
Well, okay, so in a sales context, right? We can't just shoot the shit and just get to know people. There
Yeah.
is a purpose for the call. And in a
Yeah.
B2B context, they took the call because they have a business problem they're trying to solve, right? So at the end of the day, it's not just about getting to know people, it's about understanding context so that we can understand their problems and connect them to solutions, whether it's with us or with somebody else. Steve, you've been in sales for a couple of months, right? What was your aha moment that it was really about listening and then reframing or retelling the prospect's story in a sales context to then connect them to the work that you are doing or the company that you represent?
Well, I mean, I think the first aha moment for me happened way back when in that real estate story I was sharing earlier, because, my mentor David was telling me that this mattered, but I'm an experiential learner, right? So I got to see it before it really cements in my head. And I just remember there was early on, it was maybe my second or third customer, and I'd listened to the stories that they were telling about, what they hoped to feel when they left Atlanta, came up to the mountains and got to their home. And we were standing out on this deck and we were looking out this view, looking out towards Amicalola Falls. It was just gorgeous. It was fall, leaves were turning. And I was standing there and I said, imagine what this will feel like when you're on Friday afternoon, when you drive up here after work and you stand out on the deck and look at this view. And literally the couple looked at each other and they were like, where do we sign?
That's
They were ready to make an offer right there because you
so
could
good.
literally see the emotion in their faces when they looked at each other. I was like, okay, this works, right? I got a lot of other stories about that in a B2B context, but that was the aha moment when I knew
Yeah.
it made sense to me.
Share another one from a B2B context and doesn't, just one that like comes to mind.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things we used to do this just as a standard part of our sales process at a software company I worked at years ago, where the software that we sold was about connecting people into a church context. So it was software that was built to make sure that people didn't fall through the cracks. And so in the early conversation, just like we've been talking about, we would ask questions, and these are pastors, right? So these are people who care about people, and we would ask them to share a story story about somebody that came to your church, a family that came to your church, and then they disappeared and you didn't know what happened to them. And you would see like a lot of emotion well up in that conversation. Sometimes it was sadness, sometimes frustration, depending on the situation. But we would always hear those stories. And then later on, when we finally did do a demo, we would actually remember the names of the person that they said in that story, and we would put them in to the profile that we were showing them, and then we would walk them through the situation of this family coming to church and getting connected in different ways and how the software could track that, and then how you could follow up with them. And you would literally see those pastors would smile. Sometimes they would cry, but it was amazing to connect the dots. And sometimes it was weeks between the two events. But if we really listened and heard and remembered the names and put it in the demo and then told the story in a different way with them not falling through the cracks, bro, it was like magic. And it sounds manipulative. It wasn't meant to be at all. It was really just, and it's
Showing an
basically
example.
using these principles we're talking about. You're getting the story, you're incorporating the story into the solution. And when you do that, bro, people are just like, there's no one else talking to me like this. Where do I freaking sign? Send me the contract.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't see that as manipulative because I sit here and go, again, if I think about a really good TV show, if I think about a really good movie, I'm sitting here going, what character that I'm watching do I most relate with? I constantly do that. I do that in relationships. I do that in TV. I do that in all music. I do that with everything. And so, as we're selling, the constant thing that I'm always thinking about is what is this owner playing in this story that we're telling?
Yeah.
And, thinking because like even your example, I was thinking of while you sat out overlooking with the couple there going, can you imagine a Friday? That story I'm reframing, putting myself going, if I'm in their spot and I'm sitting here on this deck and I'm looking out, I'm thinking, wow, what an incredible, just deep breath from a long ass week that I just had. That
Yeah.
I'm breathing in nature, I'm breathing in all this stuff. And as I'm talking out loud, and like they're saying, going, yes, exactly. And that's what we do as good salespeople. We put ourselves in those positions and we ask those questions to confirm what we're already initially feeling and thinking as salespeople. Because I'm going, if I'm in his position, I'd be thinking this. I'd be asking these questions. I would be wondering about this. And so as I just extract that, confirm those things that I'm thinking and feeling, now you've got connection. Now you've got a potential pathway forward. And hey, why not do that together?
Yeah. Then the sale is just the natural next step that we take here, as
Bingo.
opposed to some manipulative, like magical closing line that you had to use.
Bingo.
Yes. Yeah, and I think, as you guys were talking, where my head is going is, we talk to founders all the time who hate sales.
Yeah.
Sales for them is the necessary evil to be able to get revenue for their business, right? But they hate being on sales calls. They feel like they're not good at it or whatever, right? Imagine the freedom then to go, hold on. It's not about the magic word that you say at any point within your framework, right?
Yeah.
It's about understanding the prospect and can you solve the problem that they have in a way that connects the dots for them so that they can go, that makes perfect sense. I'm in, right?
Yeah.
So, Drew, we're in consultative selling, which means that we don't pitch on the first call, right? So if you're on a discovery call, a first call where you're kind of exploring, who is this person and how could we potentially help them? Is this a fit? That's the way we describe it a lot, right? What is kind of the ratio of talking versus listening that you found actually works?
Yep. Probably 90-10. 95-5. And that's simply because the only usually talking that I'm doing is one of two things. A, asking the question. B, affirming what I thought I heard them say. Is this what I heard you say? Yes. Okay. So if that's the case, then what about? So that first call, and I even say that, I say, hey, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. This is just us needing to understand how this thing can potentially look. And I mean, 100% of the time, people are okay with that. First of all, people like talking about themselves. Nothing wrong with that. Number two, in order for the complete picture to start to understand, can we truly be a good solution, or is there something else? We've got to burrow down and just ask a ton of those questions. And so, yeah, that would be my ratio is 90-10, 95-5.
Yeah, that's good. Well, and if you just have, we would call it more like a framework rather than a script, meaning we've got good questions that we typically ask, but we don't ask all of them all the time. It depends on where the conversation goes, but we have an objective for the call. And the objective for the call is to get to the next call. And one of the best ways to get to the next call is to leave people wanting to hear more. And
Yeah.
if you flip that, you spend 90% of the time talking and they spend 10% of the time talking, then you're left wanting. You
Yeah.
want to understand more about them, and they've already heard everything they could possibly hear about you.
Well,
They don't care about getting
and the
another
majority
call.
of the people are like, I know I've done all the talking here, Drew. And I'm like, yes, that's the objective. Objective, check mark. We made it
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I'll point out that's very nuancy, but really important, what you said, Drew, was I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. And
Oh, good.
because this is how we understand whether we're a good fit or not. I think that's really important because, again, back to what we were saying earlier, there's enough people who've heard this kind of teaching about asking questions that there's salespeople that do it because they think it's the technique of the day, right? As opposed to being genuine about it. So there are buyers out there who are really skeptical and they get in a conversation with someone and go, okay, here we go. It's solution selling. I've seen this before. So being able to articulate at the very beginning that this is why we do it, I think is really important to set the expectation. And you're still going to get some people who will push back,
Of course.
but it's I think that minimizes it.
Yep. 100%. And yeah, setting that framework, setting the standard, and say near 100% of the time, at the time we wrap up, it's it's going to go to a second call. It's just going to. And that second call isn't necessary. That's where we start to go, okay, based off of what I heard the story you tell me, here's where I can see our stories coming together and how we can amp where you are at and where you want to go and exponentially get to those next steps and basically tell an even greater story, right? Chapter 2, chapter 7, whatever that is.
Yeah. Well, I think what I want to ask you guys about next, I think this happens in the temptation for this to happen in sales calls can be there, but I think this often happens in like face-to-face networking environments more often. And little anecdote, Steve, we've worked really hard on what's our elevator pitch and how do we approach that. And you had kind of a breakthrough that I thought was so good. And I'll tell you what, it worked for me every single time. Whenever somebody asks, "What do you do?" If I think that there might be something there, rather than going, I'm in sales or fractional sales. I'll go, the company I'm with, we help visionary leaders escape the sales grind. And if they don't really care, they'll go, oh, that's cool. That's
Yep.
it.
Yeah.
They don't ask any questions.
Right.
Oh, that's cool.
Yep.
And it is like, that's a compelling thing to say. If they're interested, they'll go, huh, how do you do that? Or tell me more, right? And so you had broken it down into like 3 iterations, right? So instead of saying, we help visionary leaders escape the sales grind by stepping in as their fractional sales engine, so we want to help them move from solo seller to strategic leader. Instead of saying that, you were like, we help visionary leaders escape the sales grind. Cool. How do you do that? Well, we step in as their fractional sales engine. That's interesting. Like, what does that mean? Well, we want to help founders who are typically selling on their own. We want to help them move from solo seller to strategic leader because they often started their business because they love what they do. They don't always love selling what they do.
Yeah.
right? That sequence was so good because it started to weed out people that would either be great partners or great prospects. Because anybody that's not asking more questions is not going to be good for either.
Yeah. No, so true, man. I'm glad that works so well for you, man,
No,
because
it's
it does.
so good.
Yeah, it's killer how that, and it kind of uses that cliffhanger sort of principle that you were talking about where you leave them wanting
Leave
more.
them wanting more.
And you say that and you clip it like that, the people who care are going to lean in and go, tell me more. And the people who don't, they're not. And guess what? You just saved yourself a bunch of time talking to people who don't care.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
100%.
That's really good. Okay, I kind of want to throw this conversation has been awesome, but I kind of want to throw a wrench in everything we've been doing.
Woohoo!
Great.
So let's get tactical. How do you actually extract someone's story without sounding like a therapist or like an FBI agent, like the Grand Inquisition, trying to like get out all the details? So this is a tactic, right? That is difficult to master or to learn, but it's super important. It's called a pregnant pause,
Yes.
right? It's where you ask a question and you don't talk or fill the silence at all for as long as it takes for them to sit in that uncomfortable moment and answer the question. Steve, what are maybe some ways that you would approach, or maybe a question that you would ask to be able to create an uncomfortable moment where they have to think and answer?
What's one thing that has to happen in your business in order to achieve the dream you have a year from now? And then he would tell me what it is that needs to happen in his business. Typically, the owner's going to talk about a problem, right? It's like there's a problem happening that I need to solve, or there's an opportunity that I need to take advantage of. It's one of the two usually. Most of the time, it's a problem. Like my sales are terrible. They've been flat for 2 years. I got to fix that. So the question that really sets up the opportunity for the pregnant pause is, what happens to your business if you don't fix this problem?
And Steve, that right there, when I was first starting out in sales, what you just did, creating that awkward silence, couple of things that I learned. I would have a glass of water next to me and I would drink a glass of water after I asked the question to keep from like filling the silence, right?
Yeah.
But what I learned was that one question you just asked. How many times do you think an owner is being asked that question in their day to day? Probably not very often, right?
Very often. Not at least by salespeople.
Right,
Maybe
exactly.
their wives are asking them the question.
Well, and maybe
Or
not. Maybe their wives don't even care, right?
yeah,
So,
maybe they
like,
don't know.
exactly. That pause is them connecting back to the emotion, right? Of going, why I started it. What a great question, man. I love that.
Yeah, and the key to your point, Craig, is when you ask that question, you literally have to be comfortable sitting in that silence and not saying a word. Because here's what I know is true. The next person who talks loses. And it's just not a game. I'm not playing a game, but I'm just saying if you set that moment out there and then you talk before the business owner responds, you just lost the moment. You lost it.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Well, guys, just to kind of conserve our time here, quick fire round. What are the biggest story killers, right? The stuff that shuts down the conversation, mistakes that people often make when they should be diving deeper and being curious.
Yeah, I mean, this is an easy one for me. It's when we hear a story and we hear a problem and we immediately draw conclusions and we jump right into solving the problem instead of doing what Drew, you were talking earlier about. Hey, what I think I heard was this, or when I hear this, that usually means this. You don't do that, right? You don't ask follow-up questions to affirm or deny what you heard. You just go, I've seen this before. This is how we can fix it. And then the person's sitting there going, okay, great. Well, you clearly didn't listen to what I was saying. So we're done. What about you, Drew? What do you think?
Whenever you make it about you,
Yeah.
and the salesperson, right?
Yeah.
Going, I know what you're talking about. Let me tell you a story about what, and sometimes that is in an effort to try to relate, and it can come across like you're one-upping them,
Boom.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Total.
my story, and in an effort to try to like connect with somebody, it doesn't land that way. It lands as my story is harder than yours, better than yours, more difficult than yours, whatever. And that's not what maybe you were trying to intend. But when you make it about you, it typically will land that way.
Yeah, it's dude, I think this is like there are so many great analogies between bad sales and bad dating. Think
That's
about
true.
being on the date, right? Think about the blind date where the person you're sitting across the table from, you tell them, "Oh, I just had this amazing trip to Cabo in the spring and it was amazing. I saw the whales." "Oh, really? That's awesome. Well, I went to Greece and when I was in Greece, I saw the Greek Adonis and we took a cruise through the Greek Isles." "Okay, well, great. So much for my shitty trip to Cabo." Right? It's the same thing that happens when you're doing what you described.
That's
100,
so
and
good.
that will kill it immediately. You've lost any movement or anything you've gained at that point. You've lost.
Yeah, 100%.
Good. That's good. Well, guys, the point of this podcast obviously is to sit down with bold founders who have built businesses from scratch and now they're learning to kind of like scale beyond themselves. And we want to have conversations where we can unpack their sales breakthroughs and hard lessons that they've learned, near burnouts, like the real stories behind what it takes to grow a startup from being this scrappy little new thing to actually something that can scale and grow to accomplish what they really want it to. Starting next week, we have our first few business owners that have already booked. We're booked out almost every date through the end of this year, except for one. So Steve, who are a couple of people that we can look forward to hearing from in the next couple of months?
Yeah, man, I'm super excited. The guest lineup is, I just feel honestly humbled that we're getting people signing up so quickly for essentially a brand new podcast. But we got Jamie Tates from the Keystone Group. She's a very accomplished author, public speaker, podcaster, and she's going to be our very first guest. Then we have Danielle Putnam from the Flat Rate Group. And what's cool about her is that she took over a family-run business that her dad started many years ago. She took over and she's reinventing this company. So many really amazing stories in that kind of scenario. And I know there's a lot of founders out there who've been in a similar situation where they've taken over a family-owned business and tried to reinvent it. So Danielle's going to have some great stuff to share. And then we're going to have Ben Cooper from Amplify. Ben and his wife, Brittany, are building a business together as a husband and wife team. There's some really cool stories and dynamics of that situation that we'll get to hear from them. So, man, I'm super pumped about some of the folks coming up.
Yeah, we already know some of that story. That's going to be a really fun one too. Well, guys, every week we end the episode with a toast, and we kind of decided, rather than going around and each of us saying something, that each week one of us would just be responsible for the toast. And this week that is me.
Great.
And so this week I would like us to raise our glasses to the incredible founders that took a chance on starting their businesses and chasing their dreams, many of whom we're going to be talking to in the next coming weeks, many of whom we may be talking to in the next few years, and many that we may never meet. And may they have moments where they can share their favorite drink that is best enjoyed with friends.
Cheers.
Cheers to that. Fearless founders. Awesome. That's a good toast.
Excellent.
Yes.
Guys, that is it for this episode of Whiskey is for Closers. Thanks for drinking with us. Remember, the best closers aren't always the best talkers. They're the best listeners who happen to take great notes. Use your CRM. That's just a plug. Subscribe, share with that founder who won't stop pitching, and we'll see you next round.